Xalen Firth leaned back in the molded composite chair, chewing the inside of his cheek as he stared at the ceiling of Lecture Dome C. The panel lights were too bright, the recycled air too dry, and the voice of Instructor Nelvax much too nasal for a being without a nose buzzed through the room like a mosquito with a political agenda. Nelvax's long, silvery limbs gestured above the lectern. And so, as we continue our comparative xenomedical studies, I request you to review the pharmacological approach of humans to pain management, namely their reliance on self-prescribed analgesics. The word hung in the air. Several alien students turned in unison, eyes or their species' approximation of eyes settling on Xalen. He blinked. What? Instructor Nelvax tilted forward. Mr. Firth, perhaps you'd like to elaborate on this custom. Do humans truly obtain pain inhibitors without medical evaluation? Xalen scratched his head. Well, yeah. I mean, not always. But yeah. You get a headache, you pop a couple pills. Back pain? Heat pad and ibuprofen. Twisted ankle? Ice and acetaminophen. A student with translucent blue skin raised his mid-limb. Even without a diagnosis? Yeah, Xalen said. We kind of self-prescribe all the time. A ripple of disbelief swept through the room. One student, shaped like a spiraled horn with limbs, squelched in protest. That seems reckless, it said, translated through the dome's speaker system. How do you know it is not internal organ failure? We don't, Xalen said. Usually it's not. We just wait and see. The room was silent. Even Nelvax seemed momentarily stunned. Then someone near the back muttered, "Humans are terrifying." Xalen chuckled. "Hey, we're just practical." Instructor Nelvax's limbs flared. "Very well. Mr. Firth, I would like you to assist with the upcoming comparative pharmacology practical. You will provide a demonstration." "What kind of demonstration?" "Your self-prescription habits. In a controlled setting. For educational purposes." Xalen's smile froze. "Wait, like, I act like I have a headache and take something?" Nelvax turned away. "More immersive than that." 3 days later, Xalen sat in the observation room attached to Xenomedical Lab 4. His left arm was fitted with biometric sensors, and a tray of common over-the-counter medications sat beside him, labeled in 4 languages. The alien students stood behind a transparent barrier, watching. "So," Nelvax said, "explain your actions as you would normally behave." "Well," Xalen said, picking up a pill bottle, "say I wake up with a nasty backache. I'd probably stretch a bit first, maybe grab a heating pad. Then I'd take 2 of these ibuprofen, anti-inflammatory." He opened the bottle and swallowed 2 tablets with a sip of water. Nothing happened. The class watched silent. "Now what?" Xalen asked. "Now we wait," Nelvax said. The problem came 2 days later during planetary field training. The students were sent to a low-gravity terrain zone to study environmental effects on physiology. Xalen, ever the reluctant volunteer, had agreed mostly because he wanted to be out of the lecture domes. He'd barely started his descent into the ravine when it happened. His left foot twisted on a loose rock and he crumpled, pain shooting up his shin. Something in his ankle felt wrong. Really wrong. "Xalen," a voice called. A blue-skinned student Drava skidded down toward him. "I think I sprained it," Xalen hissed. Drava's gaze moved over his leg. "You should not move." "No kidding." He gritted his teeth. Another student arrived, this one with a segmented shell. "Do you require medical extraction?" Xalen nodded. "Yeah. I can't walk on this." Drava turned to the others. "Contact the med pod. He needs a scan." The scan in the med pod revealed a hairline fracture in the fibula and a moderate ankle sprain. "You will require immobilization and rest for several weeks," the medical technician said, pressing a stabilization brace to Xalen's leg. He groaned. "Weeks? Yes. Your biology does not permit rapid regeneration." Xalen leaned back. "Guess that field trip's over." Back in the dormitory, Xalen stared at the ceiling, leg elevated on a stack of folded towels. Drava entered, holding a small container. "I acquired this. It is a non-harmful sedative from my planet. It eases discomfort. Thanks, but I'll stick with something I know works." He reached for his bag, pulled out a familiar orange bottle, and shook out 2 tablets. Drava watched. You continue to self-prescribe? It's ibuprofen. It's fine. But you are under medical care. Yeah, and the doc said I could take these. Just not too many. Why not request a prescription from the staff? Because I already have what I need. Drava tilted his head. You trust yourself more than specialists? Xalen hesitated. Not more. Just, I know my limits. I'm not taking anything dangerous. I've done this 100 times. Drava didn't respond. He set the alien container down and left. 2 days later, Xalen was back in lecture dome C, leg propped on a hover rest. Nelvax paced. Today, Nelvax said, we examine the psychological implications of self-directed pain management. Mr. Firth, would you care to participate? Xalen grunted. Sure. Why not? Nelvax gestured to the screen. A new chart appeared showing fluctuating hormone levels. Your recent scans indicate elevated cortisol and disrupted sleep. Xalen blinked. So, you are not healing optimally. I'm in pain. Of course I'm stressed. You continue to self-dose with ibuprofen despite its limited efficacy in your case. It dulls the edge, but not the cause. Xalen sighed. No, but that's how we do it. We treat the symptoms until the body catches up. A murmur spread through the alien students. Nelvax approached. And if the body does not? Then we go to the doctor. But only then? Xalen hesitated. Usually. Nelvax turned to the class. Observe. This is not ignorance. It is culture. Mr. Firth, your people prioritize function over optimal healing. Xalen tensed. We just don't always have the luxury to sit around. Life keeps moving. The statement hung in the air for several moments. Recovery was slow. Xalen followed the regimen, but the pain persisted. A week in, he overexerted himself trying to reach a dropped data slate and flared the injury. Brilliant, he muttered, slumping back into his seat. Drava entered moments later. You are still taking the ibuprofen? Yeah. It is not helping much. Nope. Then why continue? Xalen looked at the bottle. Habit. Hope. I don't know. Drava sat beside him. We reviewed human pain responses today. Your species has a high tolerance. But you also fear it. Xalen raised an eyebrow. Everyone fears pain. No, not like this. You anticipate it. You plan your lives around escaping it. You carry chemicals for it. Xalen looked away. Pain's a distraction. It makes you less you. Drava was quiet for a moment. I think your species fears being vulnerable. Xalen didn't respond. Another week passed. His swelling decreased. The brace was removed. He began therapy sessions guided by a half-robotic instructor who corrected his gait with unnerving patience. Nelvax scheduled a final lecture titled Adaptation and Avoidance, a Human Perspective. Xalen was invited to speak. He stood, still limping slightly, gripping the lectern. We don't like pain, he said. But not just because it hurts. Because it slows us down. Because it reminds us we're breakable. He paused, looking at the sea of alien faces. So we take pills. We patch ourselves up. We try to keep going. It's not always smart. But it's how we cope. He held up the orange bottle. This? It's not bravery. It's fear. Controlled fear. We're not trying to be tough. We're just trying not to fall behind. No one spoke. Nelvax finally nodded. Thank you, Mr. Firth. That was enlightening. Later, as Xalen packed his things for a return trip to Earth, Drava found him in the corridor. You're leaving. Graduation's in a month. I've got a follow-up scan scheduled back home. Drava extended a limb. I hope your pain lessens. Xalen smiled faintly. Thanks. And hey. If anyone ever asks why humans overuse painkillers, Drava raised a brow. Yes. Tell them it's because we're scared of stopping. Drava nodded. I will. Xalen turned and limped toward the launch bay. The Eastern Dome Garden had just finished its scheduled dusk simulation, and a warm lavender light filtered through the artificial canopy as Xalen leaned against a railing, watching a group of first-year students chase a levitating drone across the moss-covered floor. His ankle held up better now, though the scarred stiffness in his lower leg still made him wince if he twisted too quickly. You're still here. said a voice behind him. It was Vorthi, the only student from the Kelnari system who wore robes in a place where robes constantly caught on doors. Flight got delayed, Xalen said, not turning. Solar flare interference. They're holding all Earth-bound transports for 2 days. Vorthi stepped beside him. I assumed your species would simply ignore a flare and fly through it. Tempting, Xalen said. But we've learned not to gamble with gamma radiation. Mostly. Vorthi examined him with his vertical pupils. I attended your final presentation. You said humans fear stopping. I have been thinking about that. I was hoping no one remembered that part. I remember all parts. Vorthi folded his arms. On my home world, when someone is in pain, they stop everything. They are fed, bathed, meditated over. They are considered sacred until they heal. Xalen raised an eyebrow. Sacred? They are not asked questions. No one speaks of duty or progress. Only healing. That's nice. Not really an option where I'm from. No. But perhaps it should be. A breeze blew through the garden vents, stirring the thin leaves of the bioluminescent flora. Xalen watched the drone bump into a tree and spin wildly before righting itself. I'm not great at sitting still, he said. Even when I'm supposed to. I noticed. You limped up a flight of stairs during the seminar. There was a lift 5 meters away. Habit or compulsion? Xalen didn't answer. They stood in silence for a while. Then Vorthi said, would you like to see something? Xalen glanced at him. If it doesn't involve more lectures. Vorthi led him deeper into the garden. Past the main path, through a curtain of hanging vines that glowed faintly when disturbed, and into a recessed alcove with a low ceiling covered in mirror stone. In the middle was a white pedestal, and atop it sat a shallow bowl filled with a pale gray substance that swirled slowly without any visible motion. This is called null self, Vorthi said. It only works on carbon-based life forms. It doesn't numb pain. It absorbs it. Xalen leaned closer. What does that even mean? It takes the pain and stores it. Temporarily. The body still registers the injury, but the suffering is suspended. Like pausing it? Exactly. Xalen stared at the bowl. Why are you showing me this? Because you have been carrying pain for too long. And you keep trying to outrun it. Xalen looked away. I'm not trying to be a hero. I know. You're trying to be functional. It's not the same. Vorthi dipped a long finger into the bowl and stirred once. The substance shimmered, casting a ripple of light across the ceiling. Place your hand inside, he said. Briefly. Xalen hesitated. Then he rolled up his sleeve and touched the surface. It was cold. Not the kind of cold that made you flinch, but the kind that made the nerves retreat. The ache in his leg dulled instantly. Not disappeared, just folded and placed somewhere else. He pulled his hand back. That's weird. You still know the pain is there, Vorthi said. But now it is quiet. Xalen flexed his fingers. Why don't more people use this stuff? It is not permanent, Vorthi said. And it is not addictive. Which means your kind would probably ignore it. Xalen laughed despite himself. Yeah. We're big fans of instant gratification. Vorthi replaced the lid on the bowl. Come back before you leave. You may use it again if you wish. Thanks, Xalen said. Seriously, that was unexpected. Most healing is. Later that evening, Xalen returned to his quarters. His roommate, a quiet insectoid named Tresh, stood by the window scanning a star map through 8 ocular lenses. Your neural readings are flatter than usual, Tresh said without looking up. Did you undergo sedation? Nope, Xalen said, collapsing onto his bunk. Vorthi showed me some kind of alien spa trick. Took the edge off. Curious. Your pain response was unusually persistent. I assumed you were deliberately disregarding your body's feedback. Not deliberately, just persistently. Tresh clicked his mandibles. You are difficult to categorize. You acknowledge pain but do not obey it. That's not bravery, Xalen said. That's capitalism. Tresh tilted his head. That word remains elusive to me. Yeah, me too. A few hours later, Xalen was summoned to Medical Annex 6. The message was brief and signed, and lacked any explanation. He arrived to find an unfamiliar figure waiting tall, with 4 thin arms and a translucent dermal layer through which faint neural pulses flickered like lightning behind clouds. "I am Dr. Ilver," the being said. "You have been referred for a neurological compatibility study." Xalen frowned. "I didn't sign up for anything. You were recommended by Instructor Nelvax. You are a statistical anomaly." "I get that a lot." Ilver gestured toward a reclining chair surrounded by diagnostic equipment. "You may decline. However, the data may benefit both our species." Xalen hesitated. "What's the study?" "We wish to examine the human brain's willingness to endure discomfort without intervention. Specifically, your threshold for untreated pain." Xalen folded his arms. "You want to hurt me on purpose?" "Only minimally. And only within safe parameters." He sighed. "Do I get a cookie?" Ilver blinked. "What is a cookie?" "Forget it." He sat in the chair. Electrodes were gently affixed to his temples, jaw, and upper spine. A minor current buzzed through his muscles, making his teeth rattle slightly. "Now," Ilver said, adjusting a dial, "we will apply a mild physical stimulus. You will indicate when it becomes intolerable." Xalen braced himself. A sharp warmth pressed against his forearm, not unbearable, but insistent. He waited. After a few seconds, Ilver looked up. "You have not signaled." Xalen shrugged. "It's not that bad." Ilver increased the pressure. "Now?" "Still fine." Another increase. The warmth became a burn. He clenched his jaw but said nothing. Ilver reduced the intensity and removed the sensor. "Fascinating. Your tolerance is higher than any previous subject. Lucky me. Your species appears to associate pain with failure. But you specifically seem to associate it with momentum." Xalen rubbed his arm. "Staying still feels worse than the pain." Ilver nodded slowly. "I believe that is the key." The next morning, as the departure schedule was finally cleared, Xalen made one last stop at the Eastern Dome. The null salve was still there, now covered with a fresh cloth. Vorthy wasn't present. He dipped his fingers once, just enough to calm the tightness in his leg. The relief didn't feel like cheating this time. It felt like exhaling. As he left the alcove, a group of new students passed him, chattering in overlapping dialects. One of them glanced at him, then whispered something to another. They both looked wide-eyed, then hurried on. He sighed. The human who self-medicates had apparently become a minor legend. In the docking bay, as he boarded the shuttle, he noticed Drava standing near an auxiliary console. "No limp today," Drava said. "Better than yesterday," Xalen replied. "Did you learn anything useful?" He thought about that. Then, yeah. Sometimes pain's not the problem. It's the expectation that you shouldn't have any. Drava inclined his head. "And the pills? Still useful. But I'm trying something new." "What is that?" "Listening to the pain before I drown it." Drava smiled faintly. "That sounds very human. Or very alien," Xalen said, stepping onto the shuttle ramp. "Depends on who you ask." The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Xalen stepped off the shuttle ramp into the arrivals bay at Earth's interstellar academic port, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. His leg twinged slightly as it adjusted to Terran gravity, again denser than the orbital campus, but familiar. The brace was gone, replaced by a compression sleeve beneath his trousers. The null salve's effects had faded days ago. What lingered was subtler, a strange calm where the urgency used to be. "Welcome back to Earth, Mr. Firth," said a customs agent, handing back his ID chip. Xalen tucked it away. "Anything exciting happen while I was gone?" "Flare knocked out half the Mars trade grid. But that's not your problem unless you're hauling lithium." "Not today." He moved past the checkpoint and into the medical wing. The follow-up appointment had been scheduled weeks ago, but he'd nearly forgotten about it until a reminder blinked in his inbox during the shuttle ride. A short hobble later, he was seated in an exam room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and old coffee. A nurse entered, glanced at his chart, then gestured for him to remove his shoe and roll up his pant leg. "We'll do a scan first. Any swelling lately?" "Only when I sit too long. Flights don't help." She nodded and passed a portable scanner over his leg. The device chirped in a neutral tone. Ligaments healed. Bones stable. You've got some scar tissue, but nothing abnormal. You doing your exercises? Mostly. She gave him a look. Mostly, huh? That's a new one. He shrugged. I do what I can. Well, the good news is you're cleared for full activity. But if it flares up again, don't wait 3 days to come in. You're not in space anymore. He nodded but didn't answer. A while later, he exited into the central atrium. The place hadn't changed. Same rotating banners welcoming alumni, same overpriced vending kiosks trying to sell nutrient bars with flashy holograms. He passed a group of students gathered around a floor screen looping a documentary called Humans. Resilience or Recklessness? He paused. The footage showed a human firefighter running into a collapsing building, then cut to a soldier tying a field dressing around a bleeding leg while radioing for air support. The narration was in galactic trade standard, but the tone was unmistakable. They think we're lunatics, he muttered. A voice behind him said, They're not wrong. Xalen turned. A short, olive-skinned woman with a clipped accent and a lab coat approached. Her badge read Dr. Ines Laren, Xenoclinical Rehabilitation. I read your file, she said. You're the reason we've had to host 3 separate ethics panels in the last month. Glad to be of service, he replied. Come with me. He followed her down a side corridor, past glass walls revealing biomechanical labs and recovery rooms filled with floating treadmills and muscle mapping interfaces. They stopped at a door marked Adaptive Stress Response Trials. We're testing non-pharmaceutical pain modulation, she said, opening the door. Pilot program. We need human subjects. Xalen raised an eyebrow. Why me? Because you're honest about how you handle pain. Most people lie. You don't. That's rare. Inside, the room was sparse, just a padded bench, a biometric console, and a small tank of what looked like thick gel. What's the catch? He asked. No chemical intervention. No pills. No injections. We're testing whether targeted sensory input and environmental control can reduce perceived pain. He stared at the gel. You're gonna stick my foot in that, aren't you? Ankle, actually. And you'll keep it there while we cycle temperatures and sonic frequencies. He Saturday. You know this sounds like a weird spa treatment. It is, but with math. She attached a monitor to his temple and adjusted the tank settings. Ready. The gel shimmered. He submerged his ankle. It was startlingly cold, then immediately warmed to body temp. A low hum began in the walls. Tell me what you feel, she said. Mostly like I stuck my leg in alien pudding. Good. That means the base layer's working. As the hum shifted in tone, he felt a faint tingling in his calf, like the aftermath of a static shock. Pain level 2, maybe 3 when it pulses. Breathing normal. She tapped data into her console. You're adapting faster than expected. Guess I'm just used to being uncomfortable. She didn't laugh. That's not a compliment. I didn't take it as one. After 15 minutes, she deactivated the system and handed him a towel. Pain level now? 0. But I can still feel the stiffness. That's expected. We're not erasing the injury, just the noise. He flexed his foot experimentally. Not bad. This method is meant for chronic cases. But if it proves scalable, it could replace a lot of the drugs you've been relying on. He gave her a flat look. I haven't touched those since I got back. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Didn't need them? Or didn't want them? He paused. Little of both. She nodded. We'll schedule another session next week. In the meantime, no over-the-counter anything. I want unfiltered feedback. He stood, testing his balance. Fine. But if my leg falls off, I'm blaming you. You'd still be less dramatic than my last subject. He cried because the gel was green. Later that evening, Xalen met an old friend, Marcus, at a small cafe just outside the port sector. Marcus worked in logistics and looked perpetually exhausted. "You really didn't take anything this time?" Marcus asked, sipping a too-hot espresso. "Nope. Went full raw nerves." Marcus whistled. "Man, I stubbed my toe and I'm popping acetaminophen like candy. That's the thing. I used to do that too. But once you step outside the cycle, it's weirdly manageable. Manageable like, I've achieved inner peace, or manageable like, I scream into pillows now? A little of column A, a little of scream therapy." Marcus grinned. "So what's next? Gonna lecture on pain at universities?" "God, no. I'm just trying not to limp through life." Literally. They chatted until the sun dipped below the horizon. Earth's colors richer and more chaotic than any orbital dome could replicate. The next morning, Xalen returned to the port for his exit check-in. A medical officer scanned his records, paused, then looked up. "You've been flagged as a candidate for the human durability study," she said. "Already did my time as a lab rat." Politely declining. She nodded. "Understood. Your medical file will be updated to reflect your current status. No prescriptions on file. No active conditions." He signed the clearance form and stepped away from the desk. As he walked back to the terminal, he saw a group of tourists watching a replay of the same documentary he'd seen earlier. This time, the narrator ended with a quote. "Humans do not seek pain, but they refuse to be defined by it." He chuckled softly. "Getting better at quoting us," he said, and kept walking.